There it is. Right as our vice chair is walking in, I'll go ahead and call this February meeting of the Police Accountability Commission to order at 6:36. Roll call. We'll go down the list and just sort of make sure everyone's microphone is working, starting with Trustee Escamilla Greenwald,
Present. Thank you.
Commissioner Myers, present. Vice Chair Griswold,
Present.
Commissioner Sherman, Commissioner Canning.
Yes.
All right, and I am also present. Let's see, does anyone want to make a motion for approval of the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, agenda approved. Brief announcements from city staff. Kelly.
So I just want to make sure that all commissioners are aware that at last week's city council meeting, the city council had a conversation on commissions and commission structure and scope. This was a report back from a subcommittee of Josh Chapman and Bapu Faitla that the council had appointed almost exactly a year ago now. So this was the first time they had come back to speak to the rest of their colleagues about what they were thinking and recommending. There are recommendations for modifications to a number of commissions, in particular with the idea of trying to align them with the general plan and our general plan update that the city will be embarking on shortly. For this particular commission, there are not any specific recommendations. The council directed the subcommittee and staff to go back and work on providing some updated authorizing resolutions. For those of you who aren't aware, an authorizing resolution is what provides the role and responsibility and creates the actual commission. So we will work with the subcommittee on that and bring those back to the full council at such time as we have them complete or ready for a review. Again, no changes proposed to this commission, but wanted to make sure that you were all aware, particularly if you were hearing anything in or around the community and had questions about it.
Thank you. Any commissioner announcements? And well, I guess just on my part, I just wanted to welcome everybody to our Black History Month meeting. Beyond that, any council liaison announcements? Oh, yes, go ahead, please.
I just want to make a request. It's sad information. I'm sure Kelly has heard by now. When we adjourn in honor of one of our, he was a auditor, right?
So our independent police auditor that we had before, Mike Janako, name is Bob Aronson, and he passed away at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
So
and
unexpectedly.
he was our first auditor, and he worked really well with us, and it was shocking and sad that to hear that he passed away. And so when we end the meeting, I would like to adjourn in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner announcements? All right. That moves us to item 4, public comment on non-agenda items. This would be for any items that are not already agendized later on in the meeting, or if you can't stay for one of those items, this would be an opportunity to engage us on that now. But any general public comment at this point? All right. I'm assuming no. Recorded, right, Kelly? Thank you. Okay, so consent calendar, our minutes from the last meeting. Anyone want to make any edits or a motion to approve the minutes from the January meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. All right, let's move to our police auditor update. Mike, glad to see you. Take it away.
Thank you, Dylan. Good evening, everyone. Wow, I didn't know about Bob, and I'm sad to hear that he has passed. Bob and I go way back. I think back in 2001 when I first got into oversight, he had already been up and running for a while, and I used his experience as a way to sort of gain, to take advantage of his experience to sort of get started. And we have been in touch ever since, although not recently, clearly. I'm sorry to hear that he has passed. And thank you, Cecilia, for that generous suggestion. I have a few things. One is the last case that I received in 2023. I completed the write-up on that. It's in your packet. I think the allegations are fairly straightforward. I think the disposition made sense. And the only issue that identified and the chief agreed with addressing had to do with the fact that when the subject employee was brought in for his interview, the investigator assigned to the case put a tape recorder in front of the two of them and intended to tape record the interview. But there was an equipment malfunction. And so that interview did not get tape recorded, which is too bad. Tape recordings are generally standard for subject interviews in police cases these days. And Davis PD has a protocol that generally the expectation is that they will be recorded, but as I know in my past experience as an investigator, there are times when the equipment just doesn't cooperate and you don't know it always in time. So it's understandable, excusable. It's unfortunate, but excusable. And fortunately, there were this case was not as dependent on the subject interview as others in my experience. But one thing I thought that was important and wasn't done was that if in fact, when the investigator is putting together the investigative report, in our view, the investigator should note that there was a failure of equipment with regard to the attempt to tape record the interview. Because when I received the investigative package, there was no such notation. So she indicated that she had tape recorded the interview or intended to tape record the interview. So then I looked at the materials. I didn't have a tape recording of the interview. And so I asked the chief, where's the tape recording of the interview? And he said, well, and then he explained what happened. But in my view, that what happened should have been included in the initial investigative report. It's just a small thing, but these small things are important to ensure that there's integrity and completeness and accuracy in the investigation. So that's the recommendation. The chief has agreed with it, and I don't think there's going to be any controversy about getting with the investigator and ensuring that as she gets future cases, that she one, make sure the tape recorder's on, but two, if it fails for some reason, just to include that in the investigative report. That's it with regard to cases. Haven't received any new ones. I'll be checking in with the chief as I do periodically to see if new ones have come in. But as far as I know, those are it for the closed cases. We're up to date. There are no pending closed cases, which I think is probably good. It is good. And then turning to the audit. As you know, we were tasked by the PAC in conducting an audit of recruiting and hiring practices. That audit has been completed. We were able to travel. My colleague, actually, Steve Connolly, traveled to Davis and completed the final piece of that by reviewing background investigations. The audit has been completed. I sent it over to the chief for his review last week. And I suspect that by the time the commission convenes again, we'll have a completed report that we'll be able to share with you with our findings and any recommendations we might have. So that's an update on the recruiting and hiring audit. The last thing that's on my list, of course, open to any questions that you might have about our responsibilities. Well, actually, there's two more. One, if you recall, I mentioned at the last meeting this new law that requires that when individuals are stopped, that before any questioning can occur, like, do you know why I stopped you? Which is usually what officers used to say. Now they can't do that. Now they have to go forward and indicate the reason for the stop before any kind of interrogation can proceed. I checked in with the chief since our last meeting, and he has, in fact, already implemented policy that provides that guidance to his officers with regard to ensuring that they follow the new law. There was a question raised about whether it would apply to bicycle and pedestrian stops, and the policy, as written by DPD, does apply to any stop, whether it's pedestrian or vehicle. So, so that I think is good, and it's a generous and liberal interpretation of the statute, so that any stop in which somebody is no longer free to leave will require officers to indicate the reason that they're being stopped prior to engaging in any kind of interrogation. And then the last thing is a request from one of the commissioners, I think it was you, Dylan, that wanted just a little bit of discussion on facial recognition. It's an interesting development. I think most people who are in law enforcement have, or in consulting or in investigative work, have mixed feelings about facial recognition. It can be a tool, but it can be a tool that can result in mistakes or misidentification. Before I talk a little bit more about facial recognition, I think we've had conversations before this body about the whole identification itself. I think it's very clear that looking back at prosecutions that have resulted in innocent people going to prison, have almost all of them almost all of them were based on incorrect identification. But these are in the days of way before facial recognition was even an idea. It's simply a situation where a person says he did it, and there's reliance on that identification. Years later, it has turned out that he didn't do it. And it's usually not a case of an individual intentionally misidentifying an individual, but it's just a situation where people are not very good at identifying others. We think we're good at that, but we're not. And that's true for cops. It's also true for civilians. People have a sense of overconfidence, particularly police officers, that they've got the right person. And oftentimes they get the wrong person. To the degree that identification is unreliable, it's even more so with regard to cross-cultural or cross-racial identification. So when a white person is trying to identify in a lineup, for example, a person of color who is believed to have committed the crime, they're going to get it wrong more often than if it's somebody who is of the same race of the witness. And the same is true for people of color. So that is an issue. So with regard to facial recognition, those who are proponents of facial recognition would argue that facial recognition databases, facial recognition applications are actually more reliable than individuals with regard to the issues of identification. So if they're more reliable, why shouldn't we rely on them more? Or in the same way that we would rely on, civilians identifying bank robbers and bank tellers identifying bank robbers and FBI agents identifying individuals that they may witness commit a crime in their presence. So that's just one of the arguments. On the other hand, facial recognition, initial studies have shown that the facial recognition technology suffers from the same defects that individuals do, particularly with regard to cross-cultural identification. The facial recognition software doesn't appear to be as robust and discriminating and helpful and accurate with regard to individuals who are subjects who are people of color than white people. It's a little unclear why that's the case. Some people believe that because most of the individuals that program and develop this facial recognition software are not people of color, and that may have something to do with the discrepancy or not. As a result of some of these issues, I think many agencies, in fact, I think a good number of agencies have certainly put a pause on the use of facial recognition to identify individuals for criminal purposes. However, private industry has no such bars or any kinds of barriers to their employment of facial recognition technology, and they are using it big time. Merchants are using them for their surveillance cameras in their properties, in their retail space. Private property owners are using facial recognition to identify individuals who trespass or burglarize residencies, apartments, and condominiums. So they're being used. Foreign countries, some foreign countries are using them extremely significantly, and the best example of that is China. China is using facial recognition to do all kinds of things that we would object to in this country. On the other hand, some countries have banned the use of facial technology, facial recognition technology entirely. That includes all of the EU countries, as an example. England, who is not a EU country anymore, also has banned facial recognition technology. So this is really a controversial topic. Some people think it's great when it works, and it probably is great when it works. And others really have some concerns about it because of the mistakes that are made. One of the things that I think is evident is that, and I think this is a best practice, is that if you're going to use facial technology and it becomes the basis for why you have ended up bringing charges against an individual, the use of that technology should be made clear during the discovery process. And sometimes that is not true. So the subject or the defendant has no clue that part of the discovery of this person's identity was through facial recognition technology. And I think that is a problem. The federal government is probably the biggest user of facial recognition technology than any other agency in the country. Or the federal agencies have no bar on facial recognition technology and are using it not only for criminal prosecutions and investigations, but also for intelligence gathering and other work that the FBI is involved with that is non-typical criminal. Again, some think that's great and some think that's not so great. But again, proponents of facial recognition technology point to the success that the FBI has had in identifying the insurrectionists who invaded the Capitol on January 6th as why facial recognition technology is so important. And they point to their records, or in a general way, talking about how, we have had over 1,000 arrests of individuals who are believed to have trespassed and broken other laws in invading the Capitol on January 6th of 2020. We've had 900, I think, or so convictions since that time. And I think the FBI has said that a great number of those individuals would not have been identified but for the use of facial recognition technology. So there's the counter argument to its use. I'm not sure that the ends always justify the means in these kinds of cases, but it is just a counter argument that is out there. And I think the only other thing I would say is if you line up in most cases what it is that results in successful convictions, the most reliable barometer and is almost always foolproof with regard to making cases, investigating cases, making arrests, and gaining convictions that are solid is the use of DNA. And I'll leave it at that. But I certainly welcome any discussions or questions. I think it's a timely topic and one that people throughout the country continue to talk about.
Thank you, Mike. I realize, we have a facial recognition item later on in the agenda, and I realize we've gotten kind of fairly deep into that discussion. Commission colleagues, do we want to just sort of smash those two items together since we've gotten, okay. You had a question?
Yeah. Mr. Janako, the insurrectionists, you mentioned that the federal government likes to use facial recognition and uses the identification of the insurrectionists as an example of how it works successfully. I'm curious to know, though, of those, how many were people of color approximately, or what percentage of the 1,000 plus people? If the majority of them, I don't know off the top of my head, but just having seen the photos that they show, on TV or news updates, it doesn't appear that a majority of them is a very small percentage, if any, were people of color. So that's one question. And then the second question is, last time when I brought this up at our last meeting, I think I asked, and I don't know if you have any information on it, I was wanting to know if the legislature here in California has proposed any legislation to address this issue, because I do know it's very controversial. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think that you are probably correct in thinking that the vast majority of individuals arrested for the January 6th event are not people of color, but I don't have those stats, and I don't know if those stats exist, but I think that's probably a good assumption there. I am not aware of any bills that have been introduced to put registers or some sort of accountability or some sort of limits on the use of facial recognition technology. Although I wouldn't be surprised if a bill would be introduced into this coming legislature on that topic, because it is a timely issue and one that people are thinking about and concerned about. So I'm not surprised by that. And by the way, with regard to the identification of the insurrectionists, it wasn't just the FBI that was using the facial recognition technology to identify individuals who are at the Capitol. A lot of private citizens ended up developing a hobby, if you will, or becoming private investigators on behalf of the federal government, and doing what they could, including using facial recognition technology to help and assist the FBI in identifying individuals that were being bad on January 6th.
Thank you.
Commissioner Caney?
I'll wait till the later discussion.
I'm sorry, the later facial recognition discussion? Because that's now.
Oh, we're
We're
Taking-
smashing them together.
got it. Okay, so Mike, do you know of any jurisdiction that collects data on hits and misses and false positives and those sorts of things around facial recognition?
I don't, Robert, and I think that would be a helpful thing if it was going to be employed to do that. But I do not know of any agency that has gone that way.
Thanks.
There were so many different topics discussed. I mentioned swimming and but one, I was very appreciative, Mike, of your recommendation in the last sort of complaint investigation. I think just whatever we can do to increase transparency and in the various operations of the department is going to, help us develop better public trust with the activities of the police department. I had another question about one of the other things you touched on. I think at the last meeting you said that you believed it was likely that someone in the state legislature would reintroduce something akin to Senator Bradford's SB 50 from last session. Have you heard anything about that?
I think Senator Bradford intends to reintroduce it.
Thank you. So you mentioned that I was the person who brought at least the facial recognition item, or at least wanted it to be discussed. We discussed it, I believe, in the latter part of last summer. I remain concerned for a lot of the reasons that you noted, Mike, in terms of the reliability of this technology, particularly with people of color, but also at least in what I've taken a look at, also struggling to, correctly identify different genders, but particularly struggling to make matches with women and folks in the LGBTQ plus community. So I've been joking over the past couple of weeks. It seems like it's only accurate with straight white men, going back to the, who's making the technology point that you touched on earlier. I think in the private sector, people using this kind of technology on security cameras and things like that could have some troubling implications. But I think really in the law enforcement context, the idea of something that, we already know is not, in its current state of technology, very reliable with, some of our most vulnerable populations, it seems like something that we should, at the very least, be very cautious about, the utilization in our own law enforcement systems. But if not, to go into the direction, as you noted, Mike, that some other communities have gone where they ban this technology in law enforcement in those communities, San Francisco, both Portland, Maine, and Portland, Oregon, Boston, Massachusetts, a number of other, it's a whole lot of Massachusetts cities. I don't know what it is with Massachusetts and wanting to provide some oversight and accountability with regard to facial recognition technology. But I was having a conversation with former Mayor Council Member Partita a couple of days ago, and she was bringing up to us the reproductive rights component of this conversation. We're already in the place where this is happening, but we're certainly going to see this increase over the next few months and years, where folks are going to be coming to California, maybe coming directly to Davis to seek reproductive health care. And the idea that even in the private sector context, but certainly in a law enforcement context, that people could be utilizing this technology to root out people who are sort of crossing state lines to get, reproductive health care, is a really troubling thing to think about. I know part of what we wanted to put an item on today's agenda for, as it says later on the agenda, is to sort of figure out what are our information resources in this area. I know that, in some of the conversations I've had with folks, talking to our learned law professors, perhaps on campus and things like that, might be what we want to look into. A bunch of folks in this community have done research in this area. And so I'm hoping that certainly next month, when we maybe can have a more, data focused discussion on this, we can decide, you know, what, if anything, this commission wants to do about that. I think we should really consider, like I said, given where we are with this technology, with our most vulnerable communities, recommending something to the city council that, some communities have done a temporary moratorium, I guess with the assumption that the technology will become more accurate at some point in the future. Some communities have done full and total, bans on the technology with law enforcement. But I think we should certainly at our next commission meeting in March have a more data-driven discussion on that. I think we might hear some more stuff in or in public comment about that later on. Were there other, I know Mike gave a lot to us in his report. Were there other questions, comments?
Dylan, Dylan,
Yes.
I just had a follow-up to your point. One thing that the commission may also want to consider is taking what is being done with automated license plate readers and maybe thinking about that. So the Attorney General actually has come out with an opinion on ALPRs that indicates that under current state law, as he interprets it, ALPRs cannot be shared with the federal government or with other outside agencies outside the state. For the very reason you just said, because of the concern about sharing that information and that it being used to get in the way of individuals exercising their right to choose.
Mr. Zilstra, but they can share it with other departments, other agencies, right? It's my understanding, not outside agencies, but with other agencies, correct?
Other agencies, but not federal agencies,
Okay.
and not out-of-state agencies.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Go ahead.
Yes, I wonder, Mike, if you could give us in brief a few of what you would regard as being representative cases. I'm having a little trouble reconciling in my own mind the facial recognition, for example, that a feature on my iPhone that allows me to access my account without having to put in a password. It recognizes my face. I perhaps have been naive, but I haven't felt that I'm threatened by that. I consider it a convenience. And I have done a little research in which I find that Google and Apple, who are the main players in the cell phone business, the smartphone business, they advertise that these systems are very highly accurate in terms of the percentage of error being very, very small compared with other forms of recognition. But how does that translate over into the reality? We're talking about cameras getting pictures of a situation, and then there are apps apparently that will analyze the video and attempt to recognize from what, a database. I can picture the classic police lineup where witnesses are asked to choose from a group of 5 people which one was the perpetrator. I'm familiar with that, but maybe you could be a little more specific in terms of just what is the day-to-day, hour-to-hour reality of how facial recognition is being used by the police in general, but if you know and can help on the specifics of the Davis Police Department.
Well, Davis, the short answer to your question, Don, is Davis doesn't use it. I appreciate the comments from somebody who is I now know a avid photography buff and very interested in the power of the camera and the power of photographs. And I am also a big fan of photography. But with regard to the reliability, Apple probably oversells, as they tend to do with regard to the inviolability and accuracy of their technology. I do know that individuals have had trouble accessing their phones if they change any facial feature, even cosmetically, like putting sunglasses on. It may not work, and probably you won't then have access to your phone, and people don't realize why. Or growing facial hair, or particularly for women, when they change their hairstyle. It creates issues with regard to accessing their very own phone. So that's, that's an issue. I do think that it is fairly accurate. I don't know that it is DNA accurate by any means. And there are cases, and it only takes really a handful of cases that can cause concern in this area, where individuals ended up being arrested largely based on facial recognition technology hits when they weren't even in the state, as it's later been proven, they weren't even in the state in which the arrest warrant came from, and had never even traveled to that state. Yet somehow there had been a false positive identifying them as the perpetrator. So, I think you may recall, I don't know, Don, if you were on the commission, I know you're a longtime attendee and probably remember this, but there was a case, a similar case to this, that I actually wrote about and covered involving the use of cell phone technology with regard to GPS locator information that ended up being entirely wrong. And as a result of relying on those wrong coordinates, a law-abiding homeowner in the city of Davis ended up having their house visited by the SWAT team. And it caused a lot of inconvenience, a lot of damage to the home as a result of the way in which the SWAT team entered the house, and a claim that was ended up being successfully processed. And so the homeowner was reimbursed for that, but can never take away the 4 or 5 hours that the homeowners spent in the police car, in the back of the police car, while they were trying to sort out whether or not there was a murder suspect at that location. I'm using that analogy to talk about how all it takes is 3 or 4 misses or misidentifications to really create havoc for individuals as a result of the use of the technology.
Any other questions? All right, I'll open up for public comment, I guess, on, let's see, items 6 and 7C. Any public comment on those items? Welcome. Whoever gets to the podium first, y'all can thumb wrestle for it. Welcome.
Hello. Hello. Do I just begin? Well, to talk about the Apple face scanning thing real quick.
Sorry, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Evan Wallace. I go to UC Davis. I'm a student at UC Davis. For the Apple face scanning thing, the phone itself, you're training it on your own face. The facial recognition for police would have to recognize a ton of different faces at once. So I think that's an important distinction to make. There's a lot of case studies about facial recognition technology going wrong, and we can pinpoint little people or little case single individuals being falsely arrested. Like there's this woman in Detroit named Portia Woodruff who was arrested for carjacking when she was 8 months pregnant, and she had to spend a day in jail. And later the charges were dropped, all because she was misidentified by facial recognition technology. In terms of California, there was a bill that just got, or a law that just got repealed in 2024, January 1st, which prohibited biometric and facial recognition on police body cameras. But there's AB 1034 called Pass the Freedom from Face Surveillance Act, which is on the Senate floor right now, which would prohibit police using body cams to collect facial and biometric data. So it would extend the law that was previously in place 3 more years. It's important to note also that the Detroit Police Department does have some numbers on facial recognition technology. In 2020, they showed that facial recognition technology was used on Black individuals 97% of the time, which is highlighting a stark racial disparity. But what we haven't talked about a lot so far is, you mentioned it for a moment, Dylan, is gender and misidentification. We've talked a lot about race. MIT and Stanford research showed that there's high error rates in gender identification, specifically for dark-skinned women versus light-skinned men. So that highlights another intersectional challenge. The University of Colorado Boulder study found significant biases in facial recognition technology in misidentifying transgender individuals. Transgender men were misidentified as women 38% of the time. And it has really hard time distinguishing between non-binary genders because the training data it takes into account old school ways of thinking of gender, like long hair for a woman, those kind of things. And then lastly, a study published by Georgia State University in 2022 revealed that police agency use, which is what we're talking about here, of facial recognition technology increased racial disparity in arrest rates. So it led to more Black individuals being arrested. So if we're just talking about like integrity of the police department, it doesn't seem like facial recognition technology seems to increase that amount of fairness for all citizens, not just the white men, like what you said about the insurrectionists mostly being white. That's a really good point. So yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, commissioners. I'm Gray Crawford speaking on my own behalf. I just had 2 brief remarks. First, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the technological side of face recognition, especially since it was brought up like in regards to cell phone face identification. I thought that was an interesting comparison because cell phone face ID, at least the way that Apple does it, relies on a special kind of projector which sends invisible light onto your face to see how all the features line up and then sends that information back to the phone to unlock it. As you can imagine, those are very controlled conditions. And while that can work quickly and reliably, it might not necessarily translate to how facial identification technology will work in the field. For example, having a body camera footage that's moving a lot or is in dark or blurry conditions or has anything of the sort that makes it a lot less stable than what I might see unlocking my phone in a well-lit indoor room trained specifically for my face. There's going to be a lot of technological concerns that mean that the applications of facial technology may not work so well. And the second remark I wanted to bring was that discarding all of that point, let's say that there comes to a time when facial technology works perfectly, that even if looking at a body camera 10 years from now, I can say like, this looks right. I can accurately identify a person from this footage. Police using facial identification technology will still run into a lot of problems, even if the technology is perfect. In its current use, it's been used to identify overwhelmingly people of color over white individuals, sometimes by percentages as high as 90% in cities where it's currently being used. And so that means the technology is going to be used to further a lot of existing police biases and will increase racial disparities in enforcement. And for these reasons, I urge the committee to, as they're going about their research, to keep that information in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ning Wan. I'm a longtime Davis City resident. I have a question. Who is that guy and why the camera is, I don't see that person. Who is that person? Is it so important that, you know, it's the meeting is not recording and recording someone else? My question, okay, I don't know if you can answer. So what I want to bring about the most important issue is I feel as a woman, my woman's rights has been violated by those sex toys, those robotic sex toys. My job was taken away by a robotic sex toy called Sharon Guo, who is a KGB robotic sex toy and made by Russian USSR, who was my classmate, is in Davis. And her name is Sharon Guo Xiaowen, is a WASPer 1978. And she has a double called Sheila Allen. And the problem is I met Sheila Allen last Saturday at the, farmer's market. She was kind of promoting herself, wants to run for the city, for the Yolo County supervisor. And I recognize Sheila Allen as my former classmate. Her name is Maggie Wang. And, but that's not the point. This Maggie Wang is not a human. Maggie is a USSR made robotic sex toy infiltrated into China and growing up with me. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Ning Wan, and I am the granddaughter of the last Chinese empire. And I am, my grandpa, the last emperor, set up a fund called Ning Wan Soap Opera, I believe supporting, Davis City operation. And that's why those, USSR spies actually were inserted to my classmates K-12. And I believe Sheila Allen is, all the resume is fake. And she is a USSR spy, it's called WASPer 1978. And she is also CCP spy. So while I encountered her at the farmer's market, I talked to her in person. I said, hey, Sheila, I recognize you. You are, I know you are Sharon Guo, and you are a USSR spy. She did, and I did ask her, I know you are not a human. And do you have uterus? He was, ha, okay. And the first time she walked away. And what happened is, when I encountered talking to her, there was someone called the police, and the police come over, and it's a
Thank you, ma'am.
Jeremy. Yeah, that's now I'm talking about the police.
The time is up for the public. The time is up.
You did not count other people.
Do you want to take a recess?
I'm sorry. That's what I'm talking. I think, do you have uterus? Are you human?
Ma'am,
Right?
ma'am.
Yeah.
So I think you wanted to give some information to us. If you wanted to share those documents with us, we can take.
Documents is, at the farmer's market, one policeman come over, say, hey, you are not allowed to stay here. You need to go because, this place belongs to Sheila. And she write down, I said, who is
Okay,
Sheila? And,
commissioners, I feel
my
take a couple
rights
minutes
has been
and we'll come back.
this person.
And we'll give ourselves a little bit of time to
I should
decompress. So
Yeah.
we'll be in recess for the next
just walk
5 minutes.
away.
All right, I'll take it back to a commission discussion on item 6 and 7C. Comments, questions from commissioners? Thank you. Oh, okay. All right, moving on to item, let's see, 7. Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. Moving on to item 7A, the IPA review. Commissioner Canning and Myers.
John and I were a subcommittee of 2 who did the annual review. We solicited input from other commissioners, and I thank you for your input. We used the same format that the commission did last year, and I'm going to pull it up because I didn't bring it up printed. Give me a second.
Actually, is there a way for us to bring that up on the screen?
Good. Got it? Okay. essentially, we divided things in, just like we did last year, into achievements, goals for 2023. That should be 2024. Why? Maybe I'm make sure I'm looking at the right one. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it says to 2023. That should say 2024 goals. Okay. So, I mean, basically, we felt that Mike did a great job. Most of the commissioners did also. And we just mentioned the things that Mike did. He participated in our community outreach meeting. He attended every meeting last year, or members of his staff did. He also completed and delivered a mental health 5150 audit last year in February, which we found very informative. And he engaged with the PAC in crafting an audit for this year of hiring practices. He's also been completely available, or his staff, to members of the commission, and of course during the commission meetings. And he delivered 17 evaluations of complaints and made 3 specific recommendations to the DPD. The one question I had was whether we know whether the recommendations had been taken up by the police department or not. Mike, you may know, but I'm not sure. The goals for 2024, basically, again, completing the process of informing the PAC about complaints within 90 days of a completed review, participate as a speaker in one community outreach meeting, and provide quarterly follow-up of past IPA and PAC recommendations about complaints, use of force, that sort of thing. And of course, this goal will need IPA city manager, DPD, and city staff to develop and implement the review process, and then continue to provide the PAC with national policing standards, information, legislation. I think Mike's been particularly helpful in us understanding new legislation every year and how that's changed sort of the face of policing as it applies here in Davis. So we feel that Mike is an invaluable asset to the city and to this commission. That's basically what I had to say. I think that's what we.
Thank you to the subcommittee. Anything further, Commissioner Myers?
The work. So thank you, Robert.
Thank you both. I did just want to, highlight, you touched on Mike's work with the mental health audit early last year. I also wanted to highlight Mike's work. We all, those of us who were commission members and those of us who maybe weren't commission members at the time, remember that there was a whole discrepancy of getting the 5150 information. And we were very appreciative of Mike's help sort of slugging the way through the process there. Other questions for our subcommittee, comments from commission members? Go ahead.
I would just like to thank you both for your thorough analysis, with which I concur completely. And you really covered all the bases, which is excellent. Gives us a little bit more of a framework going forward than perhaps a little better organization of our expectations of our relationship with Mike and his organization. So excellent. I think it's very valuable.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? I just want to perhaps turn this to Mike very briefly, because I'm recalling that it was in your review, goodness, 3 or 4 years ago that you reminded us that one of the unexplored sort of areas of partnership between you and this commission was these overall policy audits that we've now done, I guess, 3 of, and are now getting ready to do our 4th. Is there any perhaps other area of untapped collaboration that you can think that we should put our shoulder to the wheel of over the next couple of months?
Thank you for that question, Dylan, and I want to thank the committee for the feedback that I just received and appreciate the work that was done. Nothing comes top of mind, Dylan, but without maybe as a preview for the some of the couple of the recommendations coming out of this audit, they may the recommendations may ask the Police Accountability Commission to get involved in some of the processes that we'll be reviewing in March. So I'll leave it at that, but I think there may be a space, assuming the recommendations are accepted, for the Police Accountability Commission to extend its wings into other areas. And I'll leave it at that for now, because I want to tease you all with the March report. And I want you to be thinking about it with bated breath. Plus, I haven't had to go through the hoops, so I have to be a little reticent.
Thank you, Mike. And longtime members of this commission will know that I have been a longtime advocate for our participation in the hiring process, and so I look forward absolutely with bated breath to our March conversation. Other commissioner comments and questions?
I just want to say I look forward to that discussion too. It's something that other communities have implemented. And just in my humble opinion, I think it's time that the community of Davis be involved in that as well. I think it would, it should provide more transparency, Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, any other commissioner comments, questions? I'll take it to public comment. Public comment on the annual review of the independent police auditor. Any public comment? All right, taking it back to the commission. Any final comments, questions on this review?
Just to Mr. Janako, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an honor to work with you, and I really appreciate the work you've done with us the two times, and then some opportunities that you've attended our community outreach meetings and provided a lot of useful information, and even stayed after and answered questions from the public. Just being there for members of the public and for us commissioners, it really means a lot, and we really value you and appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add my voice to the thanks, and I agree that it is invaluable, the work that you do here, and I especially appreciate you keeping us abreast of what's happening out in the world of accountability. And I hope that we can see you at council soon sometime, because we'd love to have all council members share in your fabulousness.
That would be great. And maybe Kelly can try to figure out a way to make that happen.
I'll see what magic I can work. It would be helpful if the commission would make a motion to recommend to forward this review to the city council.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, move forward to the city council. Let's see here. All right, now the Surveillance Technology Policy Subcommittee, which is myself, Commissioner Canning, and Vice Chair Griswold. Since you wrote the report, did you want to?
Yeah, the three of us met and talked about recommendations that we might make to the city council about amending or updating the surveillance technology ordinance, which is part of our purview as a commission. Each year we have to review the reports, make any recommendations, ask any questions. And so one of the things that we thought about, and Dylan, you and Elizabeth really sort of brought this up, I was just the writer, was the notion of making sure that the public knows what surveillance technology is in the context of the city and the ordinance. And to do that, what we've come up with is a proposal to basically create a web page, have the city create a web page, and on that web page would be a description of the surveillance technology ordinance and the particular surveillance technologies in use by the city, which is exactly what the city council sends, or actually the departments send to us each year. But this would be sort of public facing and would be a way for the public to know. In addition to the web page, which would name and describe the different technologies, we also recommended for a couple particular technologies, one of them license plate reading, which is used by the city for parking, to put a placard on the side of the parking of the vehicles with a QR code that would then tell the public that they can go to this site and learn about what license plate readers are and the city's ordinance about the use of that data. I thank you, Elizabeth, because I wouldn't have thought of putting QR code, but that's a great way to do it. I think I think you brought it up. And the other place, the city currently has, we believe, 2 in-place surveillance cameras, if I'm correct. Both of them near I-80, one at Mace and one at downtown, I think.
The Richards overpass?
I think there's only 2 of them. Yeah, Kelly says there's only 2, right? But to place a placard on a pole, on the poles that support those cameras, also supplying information to the public that there is a camera in use, and that if they want information, they can go to website with via the QR code. So this would be an amendment to one section of the surveillance technology ordinance, and that's basically it. We've distributed to the commission. I also asked Kelly to send it off to the Chief Pytel. Did he respond at all?
No response, but
No
I did share with them.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, that was late last week, so we might get some response to that. But I think it's a great idea. I actually have looked at other cities, Berkeley, Oakland, a couple other places, Cambridge, Massachusetts. A lot of progressive cities have surveillance technology ordinances, and couldn't really find a page that described all the different types of technology used. Of course, there's pages that describe the ordinance, but not necessarily the technologies themselves. Now, the reports are public information that come out every year, but I think it's a great idea to just have a section on the city website, or it could be the landing page for the police department or Facebook, their Facebook page, give directions to it. So that's basically what we came up with.
Thank you. Did you have something, Don?
No.
Oh, yeah, I mean, as folks may recall from the last meeting, I really feel like with so many of these community accountability measures, you rely on the community to sort of know what the problem is or where there's the sort of wrongdoing to be able to call it out and, form a complaint. And with so much of our surveillance technology, there's really no way for the public to know that. And so I think it is really critical that we give a lot more information to the public about what types of surveillance technology are in use and exactly what that use might look like if they encounter it out in the community. Other questions? Did you have any other questions, comments for the subcommittee?
Yeah, I would just want to say thank you for the work that you all did. I think it's really important. And also I'm sure people know because it's been out there in the media that Davis Joint Unified School District has some cameras that have been posted at a couple of schools. And, they did a press release and provided information to the public. They were very transparent. And that was a response to hate graffiti and crimes that have been taking place around the school. And those particular cameras are keeping an eye on the school to, in the event, to capture anybody that might be, spray painting or doing graffiti. It's not all over the school, and it's at nighttime, after school hours. So, they're doing it to try to put a stop to the graffiti and the crime. And since those have been up and it's been out there that they're up, I don't believe that we've had any problems with it since then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions?
Just a question for Cecilia. So these cameras are off during school hours and turned on only after school hours? I see.
That's
Thank
correct.
you. And they're mostly exterior kind of?
They are exterior for sure.
Exterior.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I would just add to that. Yeah, I actually just got an email this afternoon about it. I was actually noting that as a very good example of the transparency that the district is using in, like, I've gotten multiple emails about that, giving updates, how long they're going to be up. They say it's from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 4 to 5 standalone motion activated cameras. They sent out maps of which schools they're at and where they're located at those schools, what they've captured, how it's affected things. So I think this is a great example that the district has been able to really let people know, hey, we're doing this. We feel you might have some concerns, et cetera. These are the pros and cons, and we want to let you know.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with one of the city council people, and her comment was that she worried that if we put placards on where the cameras were, that might deter, that might, it was sort of, it was like maybe you're giving too much information to people. You shouldn't tell them where the cameras are. But on the other hand, if you know the cameras are there, it's going to be a deterrence. That's why people have doorbell cameras and things like that. So, and announce it. And most other communities that I know of have, at least I must admit, it's a small sample. In Woodland, at the corner near the Costco on Pole Line Road, there's a camera and it's got a blinking blue light. My hunch is that I think that's a standard procedure that places, cities and jurisdictions use to sort of tell people that there's a camera here. And I think that we even had signs when we had stoplight cameras here in downtown Davis, and they're still over on Pole Line too. So yeah, so announcing that they're there is probably a good thing.
Other questions, comments? Public comment on this item? Welcome.
Hello, Greg Crawford on my own behalf. I'll keep this very quick. I just want to say that I'm in favor of notification of surveillance cameras. I drive around Davis probably 15 to 20 hours a week for my job, and I never knew that we had cameras at any of those locations that were listed. So, I mean, I don't object. Like, I have no reason to be afraid, but I just think the public has a right to know, and it would actually help deter any problems instead of just catching people in the act, which I think would make people feel a lot more secure.
Thank you. All right, taking it back to the commission, any final comments?
I guess I could make a motion that we take the draft memo and make it a real memo and forward it to the council as a recommendation for an amendment to the surveillance technology ordinance.
That's a
I
motion.
second that motion.
Make
All
a
right.
motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passed. I realize I haven't been calling for opposed, but there's everybody's been voting for the same thing. Okay. Let's see. And we have already done 7C. So 7D, racial. Oh yeah, right, RIPA. Vice Chair Griswold, take it away.
Sure. So this came up in the context of getting a RIPA report for, well, there's statewide, and then you can break things down county by county too. So last year I was interning with the ACLU of Northern California and got to help work on with between their office and a couple other organizations in the broader community looking at RIPA data for Sacramento County. And I know there was another one done for Los Angeles County and maybe San Diego County. And so it was kind of a project that different organizations took part in throughout the state to say, okay, what can we do with this data? How does it break down? And might there be recommendations that organizations would have coming out of it? So, I mean, I'm just going to like highlight some of the stuff that's in the kind of the executive summary on pages 17 and 18 that was in our packet.
Oops, sorry, Kelly, can you bring that up on the screen? Just so that other folks can see it.
Yeah, great. And so how this started out was to say, okay, how do we reimagine public safety? What does that mean? What does it mean for community to be safe? And so the definition that this group that was putting this report together came up with: communities are safe when every person is healthy, secure, and supported. And sometimes that might have to do with like what the police are doing for people. And sometimes it might be the opposite of that. But to think as that's kind of like the starting point, and to look through that lens at what this data means for the broader community. And so some of the findings just highlighted on the left would be that Sac County Sheriff's Office deputies were disproportionately stopping Black people for traffic violations on reasonable suspicion and quote consensual searches compared to other racial groups. They had stopped Black people for equipment violations specifically at a rate of nearly 5.5 times higher than white people. More than 2/3 of the hours that the sheriff's deputies logged enforcing violations were spent on non-safety related infractions. So that's stuff like taillights out or a non-moving violation, which have little impact action on community safety, but can be sometimes used as a pretextual stop to then check somebody if they have a warrant, see if they're on probation, see if they can be searched, etc. So some of the recommendations then were which kind of like creative getting around these certain things of how recommending that the sheriff's deputies stop enforcing non-safety related traffic violations that can be used for racially biased pretextual stops. Another recommendation was to fund community organizations and programs that are investing in community safety in a more creative and holistic way that might reduce interactions between the public and law enforcement, like groups providing emergency mental health services so that when a mental health crises break out, trained professionals come in who are not the police and are not armed, distributing food, offering free brake light repair. I kind of love that one because it's like so specific and logistical, but that can really be a solution sometimes. And then the final recommendation was increasing the Sac County Public Defender's budget. This is not like a commercial for my own position, but they were noting that the district attorney's office the public defender's office received $62 million, about half the funding allocated to the district attorney's office. I mean, to be fair, the district attorney is prosecuting everybody accused, and the public defender's only defending folks who are indigent and don't have enough to pay. So it makes sense there'd be some disparity, but the disparity is possibly too severe, is what they're pointing out here. And equitable funding would help the public defender hire more staff, improve services to address things like recidivism and support people who are incarcerated with mental health care needs and reduce jail overcrowding. So this, like, I think I wanted to just highlight this report, and there's a lot more if you want to read the whole thing, but just to show you can look at the data of like, what do these stops mean? What does it mean in a racial way? What does it mean in a class way and socioeconomic way? And then get really kind of creative around solutions and look at what community safety means in a very holistic lens. So I thought this was a great example of some folks who put a lot of effort and creativity into doing that.
Thank you. Great models for us to pick up from here in Davis. Go ahead.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It was really nice to see that report and some of the creative ways. Like I love the providing, repairs for people so that they don't get stopped. That's a great idea. I'd also like to mention that Kelly also sent out the statewide RIPA report, and I actually dove into it a little bit, and there's a section around page 10, 11 where they discuss the changes that the LAPD has put into place and the fact that their number of stops has gone down. The LAPD, and this is in the commission report, the new policy allows officers to make traffic stops only if the violation significantly interferes with public safety or if they have information to suspect the person has committed a serious crime. In other words, it would be reasonable suspicion, I guess. But, you know, and the number of stops have gone down across the board. And I think that probably is a good thing overall. And I was also glad to hear that I think Mike said that he thought that Senator, what's his name? Senator Bradford's going to reintroduce SB 50, which would prohibit pretextual stops. You know, we can look at the same data about Davis, although the numbers compared to like Sacramento County are quite, you know, there's about 7 times as many stops in Sacramento County by the sheriff as there are by DPD. So the numbers are real different. I don't know if Chief Pytel, can we ask him? We can ask him for a RIPA report this year to see if there was any changes. The numbers are about the same for 2021 and 2022 when I looked.
Are you saying ask him to give us like a overview of the numbers?
Yeah. I'm curious how he looks at RIPA stops and how that might differ from other members of the public might look at it. We could, yeah, I mean, we can ask him to come and talk to us about RIPA stops.
I would certainly be interested in, not that I am not interested in hearing the chief's perspective on this, but I'd certainly be interested in hearing our new deputy chief's perspective on this, who I have enjoyed hearing from over the past couple of months or so. Let's see, other comments, questions? I was struck sort of as I was thinking about this, recalling our experience with the Time for the 9 campaign and how, you know, YOLO People Power in conjunction with researchers at the university really sort of expanded the capabilities of, you know, those 3 separate commissions together in bringing, you know, together data, analyzing it, making recommendations based upon that. And I think Vice Chair Griswold, what you have brought us is a, you know, a really good model for how external to government sort of group of folks can maybe, you know, dig in into some information, you know, whereas a commission may not have as much bandwidth to be able to do that. And so part of me thinks about, you know, to what degree we can try to restitch together some of the community coalitions that have existed in the past of us as a commission or, you know, social services or human relations working with some, you know, like-minded folks in the community who might be able to help us sort of dig into some of this data. I know that, you know, Robert, you were talking about getting into, you know, this last year's bit of numbers. I think many people, even sort of data nerds, you know, eyes start to glaze over when they're looking at that kind of information. And so bringing out a way that we can dive into it a little bit more meaningfully, perhaps with some outside assistance. I know that there's some research folks in from UC Davis in the audience with us today. So that might be something for us to explore, you know, as we get deeper into this year and figuring out how we want to take a look at the last bit of data that we have. Other questions, comments on this? Public comment on this item? Welcome.
My name is Creighton. I'm just a student here at UC Davis, but I do absolutely think that that is an invaluable use of the commission's time to delegate powers to individuals, to conduct research, to really get at the core of what's going to be the most effective in terms of presenting findings and evidence to further strengthen the argument of this commission and or justify its existence or continued existence in the future should it ever come into question. It's always good to have evidence in your back pocket, so to speak.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, taking it back to the commission. Any final comments from us? We want to take any action items here. Nope. All right. Moving on to item 8, our subcommittee reports that we haven't already covered. So let's see. I feel like we already kind of heard the audit on police hiring update from Mike. Anything further, Trustee Escamilla Greenwald, myself, or Commissioner Myers?
No, just that, it'd be great to have a discussion in the future on getting members of the public involved in that process.
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Myers? Thank you. Let's see. I always forget if we do public comment on these individually. You would think I hadn't been a member of the commission for 5 years.
You can do them all at one time. If you
Okay,
want.
thank you. All right. I know there's no update on local voices, right?
Yeah, no, there's no update. Thank you.
Let's see, outreach. I know this was an early effort to get our outreach efforts organized for what I would assume would be an outreach event in the fall of this year. As a member of this committee, I know it didn't meet. So, did y'all meet in secret without me? No. Okay. Let's see. May. Oh, right. I don't understand what the
So at the last meeting, there was a request to have a subcommittee for the questions on to put together questions from the 2023
Oh,
staffings.
right. Got it.
But there's only one member of
Yep.
that subcommittee.
And that member forgot. So so I will report back at the next commission meeting on what I put together on that. Apologies.
Yeah, and I would just, if any of these subcommittees, should be removed, I think, assuming that we do have the audit for the next meeting, I'll remove the subcommittee on the police audit. If you want any of the other ones removed, just let me know. Otherwise, I just keep putting them on month after month.
Let's see. Any comment on any of those 4 subcommittees in general from commission members? Any public comment on those commission updates?
Were you asking us to do something?
No.
Let's see. Long range. We're doing pretty good on time today, despite anyway. Any commissioners want to add things to future agendas?
I do. I've had a number of conversations with citizens on the subject of bicycle safety in the city of Davis. We have a commission that has that in their title, and perhaps I should have prepared better by talking with someone there to find out where they stood on the issue. But I would like us to think about possibly some kind of liaison with the bicycle and traffic safety commission. We are now coming out of our winter darkness, and it won't be as much on our minds a couple of months from now. But at this point, I hear from many people, including some seniors who have expressed a total reluctance to use their cars after dark in Davis for fear of a horrible accident. And I have noticed it myself. I'm not frequently out driving in the evening. I was tonight coming here, and I am occasionally. I was twice last week going to meetings, and I have personally experienced close calls, really being scared. Some of you probably have had similar experiences. We have narrow streets in Davis, and they're shared with bikes and cars on the same thoroughfares. there are particulars about it, certain kinds of turns and corners that are especially hazardous. I don't think it would be appropriate at this point in this meeting to get into that discussion, but I would just like to suggest as a future discussion to agenda and get our various opinions on whether it is appropriate for us as a Police Accountability Commission, and if it's something that my fellow commissioners would like to get involved in, working with others and maybe making a plan that would include suggestions of who some of the others would be in addition to the Bicycling and Traffic Safety Commission. But we do have a problem with the visibility of bikers. I had a quick discussion with the deputy chief who was at our outreach meeting, the gentleman, I don't remember his name, but we had a nice discussion on this subject, and he expressed a great deal of concern. So I think that perhaps the two commissions and the police department could work together to do something about getting better lighting on bikes and some kind of campaign to get bicyclers to wear a tunic, a cap, a shirt, something white, because it's really rough out there. It's very hard to see them. So that's something I'd ask all of us to give some consideration to, perhaps agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you, Don. I sense Kelly maybe has something.
So a couple of things. If at any time a commissioner wishes to go to another commission meeting, not as a formal liaison, but as an interested member of the public, and even bring back a report to this commission, you're welcome to do that and provide any report back during announcements if you wanted to go to another commission meeting of a different commission. So in order, Commissioner Sherman, for us to put something like that on the agenda, we would really have to, for this commission, we would really have to try to tie it to police accountability. And what I hear you saying is a real problem and a real concern with bicycle safety, but it's not under the purview of this commission. So we would want to take that to our Bicycle Transportation and Street Safety Commission and have them talk about it and work on it. If you have a specific concern with how our police or law enforcement are responding to cyclists, inappropriate interactions or something like that, that would fall more under the police accountability conversation than would simply figuring out ways to make bicycles more safe. Does that make sense?
I appreciate your helping to define the process, and with no disrespect to any other commissioner or the city council, I just wonder if what the role would be. I guess specifically police accountability. So what is police accountability in regard to this issue? They, of course, cannot enforce laws that don't exist. So
Chairman
I
Horton,
think
can
your
ask a
suggestion is
question?
good about my bringing it up to the appropriate commission, but then maybe moving it to city council to think about the possibility of an ordinance that would require some of the measures that could be taken.
So, and the commissioner or trustee Escamilla Greenwald has something in a second, but I number one, I had a meeting a couple weeks ago with some members of the ASUCD External Affairs Commission who were, almost could have, verbatim been saying exactly what you were saying with concerns about lighting, particularly in downtown and the campus periphery sort of area. And so, you know, in line with what Kelly was saying about, you know, going to BTS, I don't, all the letters, that commission. I'd be happy, Don, to go with you over to that commission to figure out what ways we can sort of bring. I hear what kind of both you and Kelly are saying. You know, this is quite squarely a public safety concern, but is it a police accountability concern? You know, I think because we are sort of the only public safety-ish, you know, commission that exists right now. I think it's perhaps valuable and good for us to exercise some, you know, leadership and solicit some collaboration by going down to the Bicycle Street Safety and Transportation Commission to share this concern with them and see what they want to do about that. Trustee Escamilla Greenwald.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say, yeah, you beat me to it. As far as police accountability, I don't know it's accountability, but I recall in the past seeing more police officers on bikes than we see presently. But of course, I know staffing is different now than it was in the past. So it could be because of that. I don't know. But, you know, that might be something we can look into. But I've noticed the same thing as you have, Dawn. It's quite scary. The people don't have lights and it's dark and they don't have lights on the bike and they're wearing dark clothing. And oh, I can't tell you how many times they have not stopped at a stop sign and just driven through the stop sign and it's come very close to hitting a cyclist. And it's scary because I think back when I was a student, I recall one time I didn't do a complete stop, I have to admit, and I got a ticket. I was like, what? I didn't know you could get a ticket. That was years ago. I don't know that even happens now, but I'm surprised because there's cars too that just go through stop signs. But cyclists too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, be safe. You know, we don't want to hurt you or hit you. So I share your concern and thank you for bringing it up. But I think it'd be good to take it to that commission and talk to them. Thank you.
I agree. I think this sounds like it squarely lands in the commission of like bike and traffic safety. And I think it's okay. Like our commission is police accountability. It doesn't cover everything. It's not the end all be all. And I think if we can like focus our efforts on the stuff that we're really called to focus on, I think we can do it like a deeper dive into those things and can make our work stronger in what we've been called together to do. So I think it's a very important issue. And by us not taking it up doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that's exactly what that commission is called to do. So I totally trust them to handle it. And everybody as individuals can go there, but I don't think it's something our commission should take up.
And this seems like a great time for a commercial for the bike lights that DPD provides that are right outside in the little hallway area. So if you are in need of bike lights to make sure that your own bike is safe, or you know someone who needs bike lights, there are front and bike lights. There are two separate vending machines available for that purpose. But anyway, that's that. Other items to add to future agendas. As y'all can perhaps guess, it is certainly my intention to have a facial recognition item on next month's agenda. Public comment on long-range calendar planning. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do have another item. Several months ago, we had a session with Chief Vitale in which he gave us his report on the implementation of the changes that we advocated and were happy to see eventually passed by the council. Essentially, the dual response, and there were problems presented. He presented to us. Some problem areas such as the training of the 911 operators to understand what the new procedures are and where they should be applied and so forth and so on. And there were a lot of nuances that he alluded to but didn't go into in detail. And I think it might be a good time for us. It was about a half a year ago, I think, that he made that report. And I'm thinking it might be a good time for us to refresh that information. And also, there was either a statement or I took away an inference in any case that we didn't always have enough social worker support for calls, particularly domestic violence and that, noise and things going on in people's homes or in offices at school or wherever, where it would be appropriate and productive to have the dual response. So I'm concerned that we maybe don't have enough coverage, and it goes beyond what the police can do and what they can support. We need the liaison cooperation with county agencies and various sources for this, particularly the social work side of it. So I'm wondering if we wouldn't like to refresh that relationship with the chief on that point and see if we've made some progress since his report on the coverage issue.
I'm sorry, Don, just to clarify, are you talking about the the clinicians? Okay.
If we could get an update from the chief on the progress on Crisis Now and also the co-response model that the counties had for.
Thank you. That's the word I was grappling for, the co-response model that is so essential to the reforms that we have promoted.
So maybe I can work with the chair and the vice chair in figuring out how best to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Other items to add to our future agendas? All right, with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
And the meeting will be noted as being adjourned in Bob
Oh, yes.
Aaronson's memory.
Yes.